Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. And now to honor America, please join in the singing of our national anthem. Representing the three-time Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils, Arlette.
I feel like I'm at a game. Oh my gosh. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Happy Devil Sunday! Sunday! This is the Let's Go Devils podcast, Season 3, Episode 34, titled, What's Up, Doc? Yeah, what's up, Doc? And we have a special guest tonight, the one and only, a good friend at a really, really tough time that we're all going through. We brought a good friend to make sense of it all. Michael, Doc, Emrick will be on the podcast very shortly. I am your host, Sam Wu, here with Scotty on the left of Sirius XM, Liquid Metal XL. In the middle, we have Beer Baron, also known as Scott. And on the right, he is an e-bug wannabe. No, he is striving to be an e-bug. He is a history teacher. He also plays in rec leagues, and he's a hockey coach. The one and only shorts guy, also known as Jonathan. This is on the Let's Go Devils Podcast Network, all powered by Nova Product Design from Primetime Radio. And for the first time in the history of this podcast, we are simulcasting live on the Primetime Radio Network. Guys, take it away.
Gentlemen,
I got to say, speaking of that striving to be the e-bug, they did save that rule. The rule was on the block after that guy Ayers had some success over in Toronto, and a couple people were embarrassed by it, which is weird to think, but whatever. And they kept that e-bug rule, so my once the league starts up again, I still opening with positivity. That's what I'm doing. Opening with positivity.
That was a great open. Love that open.
Thank you.
Yeah, the reality is that's what we need right now. You know what I mean? Like, we are in an unprecedented time, and I think that's the buzzword, but it's a completely appropriate buzzword, is that we're in an unprecedented time. And anybody that's out there that's going crazy and going to bars and still hanging out with your friends, go home. Stop being cool. Don't listen. just come home, enjoy sitting around watching a podcast with your boys, talk a little Devils hockey, try to get your mind off of all the craziness that's going on in the world, because Lord knows there's too much of it. I don't know about you guys, but I'm more nervous about talking to Doc tonight than I am about anything that's going on outside. We had the privilege of speaking to him last year, and I still get the butterflies thinking about it. So what a privilege, what an honor to have Doc coming on tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was definitely nervous as anything last time. So, but he is a repeat, and he is, but he is a legend. So even though he's a repeat, still get kind of nervous talking to a man such as himself. So, it'll be fun. Scotty, I think this will be your first time talking to Doc, correct?
Yeah, it's my first time, so I'm really pumped up to get a chance to speak to him, especially, being in broadcasting and everything like that. Doc is a legend, just a legend, and some of the Docisms that he comes up with are just incredible. So, very excited, and I'm the same way, man. I'm getting a little like flies just thinking about it. I was talking to you guys before. I got all my questions written down. I usually never write questions. I usually just make it up off the top of my head when I'm interviewing people. But this, I'm like, I want to prepare, make sure everything's good. Yeah, man. So I'm putting in effort.
I did the same thing last time. So I get right where you're at, and I got to say this: in the first 5 minutes of the podcast, Ryan, man, getting drunk with the podcast boys tonight. Well done, Ryan. Just make sure you're getting drunk safely and being safe
at home by yourself.
At home. And to Stacy White, yes, we are all safe. I'm speaking for the guys. Hopefully, it's you guys are safe, and I know you are, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But yes, we are safe. So, and welcome to the Devils fan club watching tonight. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Hey, the Devils fan club. Yeah, and the Devils fan club just said that Doc's the best. He's always been one of our most popular guest speakers at the Devils fan club when he's in town. That's awesome. Yeah, honestly, everybody just stay safe out there. This is, like we said, it's crazy, but hopefully everything will kind of find its way. And, as many smart people have said in the past, this too shall pass, and this is one of those things that it's a little trying time, but at the same time, you know what, we'll get through this stronger and better. And hopefully we'll find some cooler things in the midst of all this, where we get to use technology for our podcast every single week, where we get to talk to people all across the globe, really. But, this is going to open up opportunities for everybody to kind of see like what we're capable of. And to be honest with you, it's, trying to find that silver lining of chaotic time is that this could open up the doors to many, many new things with technology. And hopefully this is it's going to be leading to good things. And hopefully we'll be able to crown a Stanley Cup champion. And I have an idea. I'm sorry, Boston Bruin fans, because I know you guys are, doing what Tampa Bay did last year. NHL comes back. It's July. It's mid-July, right? Why don't we just do a 31-team bracket? Maybe give Boston like the one bye, because obviously there's just 31 teams, so it wouldn't even out. But we have a 31-team March Madness play for the Stanley Cup, where everybody's on the same playing field. Just jump right in. And Mackenzie Blackwood's been playing pretty damn hot. This team's been looking pretty damn good. I'd put some money on that one. What? No takers?
I mean, that sounds interesting. That sounds interesting. Hypothetically speaking,
I just want to interrupt just what Beer Baron was saying. When we did this whole podcast, the live video feeds and everything, we did it, really just worked hard to put this together just because we were lazy. We didn't want to see each other. But we never had the intention of actually doing this podcast and doing it safely because of a pandemic. So it's kind of cool that we're actually doing it. We didn't stop, and we can keep on doing it as time goes on. But I just want to point that out there.
Yeah, and seriously, if we can go to the Rock in the middle of June wearing shorts, I mean that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we're putting it all aside now, but hopefully everything comes back, and then we're gonna have a couple amazing months of just nonstop sports action as well. So let's hope for that in the near future.
Yeah, and like I kind of looking at like logistical things occasionally, and just the logistics of having to come up with truncated schedules in a truncated period of time, and give players still give them that off time. I think the NHL benefits a little bit by they have a very long off season, and there's no big international tournaments that kind of get in the way in the summer. So I think the NHL is in a pretty okay spot, and we only had a month, just over a month left, so a little less than that probably. So there's not really a ton of games to make up, respectively.
Well, I mean,
but
you could call the
there's
regular season where it stands. You could call the regular
See
season
that.
where it stands, which would suck because there's a couple of teams that are right on the cusp of making the playoffs. It would suck for the Devils too because Vancouver is.
That'd be so tough
is-
for everyone out west. Man, they're so
There's-
close.
No, I know that.
And-
I'm just saying, like, if worst case scenario, if they wanted to do that, they could.
So I'm going to bring up another sports situation with different differences for the NHL, but this was brought up listening to Soccer Sports Talk. So in England, if they were to just freeze the schedule or freeze the standings as they are, and just award the trophy to the top team in the land, which is Liverpool, and in English soccer, the bottom 3 teams get relegated. So someone brought up the legal ramifications of teams putting forward lawsuits, basically saying, well, how can you close the season where it was? There was no way to actually play it out. Yeah, it sounds simple, and it sounds like a simple, easy solution. But when you've got that much money on the line, that could be just a feeding frenzy of lawsuits from teams saying, well, we lost out our shot at the cup. Players had bonuses that they needed to get to, so you can have individual players or the NHLPA with a lawsuit. It's going to be. I don't want to say it's going to be, but that the potential of there being a mess if they just kind of froze it as is. Now, people also may just say, well, you know what, circumstances were what they were, and that's that. So it's going to be interesting when it all comes back onto the line, which because like you said, this too shall pass, and this is no different than anything else. We've gone through big things and we've come through. This is another thing, and we will come through. But man, the first day that everything comes back online, whatever decision they make,
it's going to be euphoric.
It.
I'll say this too. A huge shout out goes to all the owners out there across the NHL, across the NBA, across Major League Baseball that are stepping up and paying all the concession and security and all of the people that live paycheck to paycheck, that run those stadiums, that keep the stadium safe, that keep the beer flowing, that keep the food going. We take a lot of that for granted. When you're in the stadium, you don't even think about it because you just want to go and see a game. But there's a ton of hardworking individuals that make those events happen. And to see Blitzer and Harris, step up, the owners of the Devils, and say that they're going to take care of those individuals for the rest of the season, or pay them out what they were due. And to see a bunch of owners do that, and there's a lot of players in the NBA, the NHL, Bobrovsky being a prominent one, who said he's going to do the same. I think that is one of the things that in all of this kind of gets lost because, not having sports sucks, but understanding that this affects people on a very personal level, to the point where how they're gonna pay for their food and their livelihood. So to see the owners do that is it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it shows a lot of goodwill on a lot of fronts, and it really brings a sense of unity together. So, really, really good on them. You can't really fault them there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's
There's nothing. Yeah,
And
hopefully all
what
the
else
teams do it.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's what seems to be happening. Like the Flames came right out and said that they weren't going to do it, but now they're facing, I think, not only pressure their own rostered
They
players,
they
but from the
they
other
switched they
franchises.
switched.
Exactly, they switched that.
Yeah.
You know, because of that pressure, because of the example set by the other teams. You know, the Devils being one of the first. Which I hope they're also doing that for the 76er employees in the down in Philly, even though they do own that, you know, that team from that city. I really hope that it's across all. Now, it's I feel for those clubs that are running on such thin margins that they need that game day stuff, and hopefully they're able to do it. And if they can't, hopefully the league will kind of step in, and the league should, you know, also step into where a lower or a smaller market team, which may be financially a little bit on the brink, or, you know, running on very thin margins, can step in and help them do the same as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because not every team is, you know, as lucrative business wise as the rest, and you know, some of the bigger teams can do it in the larger markets that are better supported, and some of the smaller market teams may not be able to physically do it. And I hope the league steps in and says, "Listen, we're going to help you out here." You know, you just got to do the right thing, and I want them to do the right thing, and I hope they all do the right thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, like, you know, from great tragedy comes great triumph, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what happens, this country has showed great resolve before, and the three of us could speak to that because the three of us have grown up in the New Jersey tri-state area, and we all lived through the tragedy of 9/11, and we witnessed with our own eyes how a community and how a country and how this area can band together and how everything can come back to normal. You know, there's a lot of us that were saying for a very long time, like, damn, during 9/11, nothing's ever going to go back the same, and our lives are forever changed, and it was, and it is. But at the same time, we did come back to normalcy. We were able to back and cheer for our teams and go to sporting events and live an everyday life, and we will after this. You know, no matter what happens in life, no matter whether this pandemic scares the hell out of you or you don't care about it, it is going to change the way we live. But at the same time, it's not going to change who we are. You know, and I feel like that's going to be the important thing. When sports does come back, it's going to be one of those great unifying feelings of just a sigh of relief, because it's going to be like, hey, life is coming back to normal.
Yes, which when sports came back after 9/11, one of the greatest things to happen was that Mike Piazza home run.
Mike Piazza beating the
You know,
Braves.
that single swing of the bat seemed to just be like this huge boost for everyone. And you know, and we did live through that in this area, and that was really weird for sports to get canceled like that. That's the last, you know, that's the only time that I know in my lifetime that that's happened, and that was scary. And you know, you can it's okay to feel some fear during this time, because it is crazy times, unprecedented, you know, whatever term you want to use. But you know, when everything comes back, everyone's going to be, I can see when all sports come back, you're going to have a lot of people coming out and wanting to be out and wanting to be in those places with their teams, with their friends, with their family, with their friends that became family, all of that, and restart life again. And I think that's going to be phenomenal. I'm looking forward to that day.
The rebirth.
The rebirth is
Feel-
great.
A lot of babies made.
Oh, you know what's the funny thing is, because there's no sports betting going on. I wonder if you go into Vegas sports book, if you put a number on how many babies will be born 9 months from now, what the numbers
they're betting
would
on.
be
Don't
like.
you worry about that. They're betting on
This is a
something in
big
Vegas.
boom.
Don't you worry.
So,
How many phone
speaking of
calls
that,
someone's getting in a day? They'll bet on anything. It doesn't matter. Don't you worry.
I saw they were betting on the weather. I'm like, isn't that kind of like whatever?
Now, I tried looking in this earlier, but supposedly on FanDuel, you had the ability to bet on tonight's Democratic debate and phrases that were being used.
Oh, nice.
It's just a glorified drinking game.
Yeah,
I know,
basically.
but I mean, looking at that app now, like there's like there are things for people to still gamble on, because man, that just doesn't end. Like that just does not end.
All right,
Man,
Sam. So I think you know, with all this being said, the lead up to today, one of the voices of the NHL joining us, the voice of the NHL. I shouldn't say one of the voices.
The voice.
The voice. So Sam said, send us a cue. So I'm sending Sammy a cue.
Here's your cue, Sam.
Okay, thank you, Scott. On the Nova Product Design Hotline from the confines of his own home somewhere in the Midwest, we brought in a good old friend from the past, Mike Doc Emrick. Doc, you're on the Let's Go Devils podcast with Sam, Scotty, Scott, and Jonathan. How are you tonight?
Good. We have almost every time zone covered, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'm able to hear you, Sam. I'm not hearing the other guys at all. So maybe there is that needs to be made.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're hearing me. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. The guys are hearing
Okay,
you.
I hear you, Sam. I'm not hearing the others. If they have, maybe they haven't spoken yet.
Doc,
they have.
I've not heard anyone else.
Okay. All right, Doc. Let me hang up with you and let me figure this out. I'll call you right back. Sorry about that. Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah, man.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, it happens.
So when we get back,
the bane of every producer's existence is a technical difficulty.
Yeah, or an incorrect mix minus. It's when someone can't hear someone and they're like, "What? What? I can't hear him.
all of that
Don't know what to say."
right over top of my head.
Technical term.
Well,
technical term.
I think what happened is the three of us kind of froze and we were like,
Yeah. or remember, Sam does make a mistake a show, so then maybe that's his single mistake for the show, even though he does. Sam has done a lot of work today, but maybe that was his single mistake for the show. But
yeah, essentially hot wiring internet from his car to the house, out a window.
MacGyver.
Somehow the guy from Die Hard is there trying to stop him at the same time. You know, like it's been a big thing going on to get all these connections together.
Sam is the MacGyver of the Let's Go Devils podcast. And for our younger listeners and viewers, if you don't know who that is, you'll have plenty of time over the next couple of weeks. Google and watch the original MacGyver.
Yeah, not the
series.
reboot. The reboot's good, but the original is where it's all.
And not
the
McGruber,
right?
MacGyver.
Yeah, MacGyver. And a Simpsons fan.
Yeah,
MacGyver.
Which,
anyway.
by the way, there have been so many clips that I've seen posted from The Simpsons, which don't mirror our time or predict the times that we're in, but The Simpsons always had this uncanny ability to they come darn close, but some of them are photoshopped, and one of the more recent ones bothered me because I knew it was wrong, and it bothered me. But they were so spot on with society at the time. There was a clip for everything.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you think about it, they were running hard in the '90s, and they were predicting what's going on today. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Listen, while we're trying to figure this out, while Sam's getting everything kind of sorted out, one of the things that I did want to kind of talk about, you know, I read this maybe it was about a week ago or something like that, but it was a timeline. And it said, first overall draft pick, starts with the team, coach gets fired. Coach gets fired, MVP gets traded, GM gets fired, captain gets traded, heart and soul gets traded, season canceled due to pandemic. That's one hell of a resume for a rookie season for poor Jack Hughes, man.
So
yeah.
So now here's another thing logistically speaking. Let's say vacate the season. Can they legitimately award player awards based on the body of work so far?
Well, look at the shortened seasons in '95 and look at the shortened season in 2012. Were there still awards awarded that year? Because I don't know off the top of my head. I'm actually asking for a friend. named
Let me
Scott.
look that up. But what I'm thinking of,
I think there were. I'm gonna go yes.
all right, let me look that up.
Because if there were, then
I know one award. I know two awards that were handed out that year off the top of my head. I know the Conn Smythe Trophy was given to Claude Lemieux, and I know the Stanley Cup
that's for the
was handed
playoffs.
over to Scott Stevens.
Yeah,
I know those two awards.
the two most important
looking
ones.
the rest
Yeah.
of it. But I'm thinking all those
I think
players
they
that.
did, though.
But can you legitimately give it to anyone based on, you don't know if someone was going to go on a hot streak for scoring goals or for assists? Are there rookies that were doing really well and their numbers are a lot better because their season was, much shorter than some of the other rookies? There's so many variables that are going to have to be figured out. Man,
also thinking about
don't
someone
envy
like
the
Mac
people
Black
doing it.
who's been picking it up.
Yeah.
Thinking about that,
would
who
he have?
would he continued into a rookie of the year kind of contending a lot more?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead,
I think we're good.
Oh, sorry. Yep, Sam.
Yeah, take two. On the Nova Product Design Hotline, we have Mike, Doc, Emrick. Doc, you're on with Sam, Scotty, Scott, and Jonathan. How are you tonight?
Good. It was an intriguing discussion that I just eavesdropped on. You're absolutely right. And how, if everything starts up and then ends immediately and we go right to the playoffs, how can you keep the Islanders out because played fewer games than teams that made it and they had one less point? I mean, it's going to be intriguing if we do get a restart on the season or any of these things. We have nothing to do but sit around and debate this. And unlike in prior times when we would have these discussions, and occasionally these discussions would occur with Sam and myself, we knew that reasonable men on both sides of a table were determining how soon we would start. And we don't have that option this time. God only knows when we will start. And there are hardworking people diligently working, and the rest of us doing our best to make sure that this does not go any further and does not spread any further. But there are hardworking men and women trying to come up with solutions, and we just don't know what we have in the future. I'm stating the obvious, and all of you people know it too. But in the meantime, it makes for an interesting discussion that I was just hearing a part of. And I'm not sure if you want to continue that or you want to talk about other things because it is not my show, it is yours.
Doc, it's Jonathan, and we can continue that. It just seems to me that there's so many ramifications by any decision that's made. And someone had brought something up in regards to English Premier League that I was listening to earlier in the week, that depending on the decisions, you could either make everyone happy, which actually is never going to happen, or the leagues can open them up to lawsuits from all angles if they just say either A, vacate the season, or B, freeze it where it is.
Yeah, and those of us that sit back here and don't have a horse in the race will say, can't we all just get along? But you realize that when you passionately care about a team, you don't want to see them wronged. And you have to understand that I'm sure that there will be something equitably that will be worked out if there's a possible way to do it, and we can somehow get back to where we can work out the end of a regular season. Because if at all costs they can play hockey this year, I'm certain they'll want to have an equitable end of the season because not everybody played the same number of games, and you had so many very close races in bubble positions for playoff berths. So that would only make sense. But as I said, it is before we would sit there in December and in January as half seasons lost would eventually reach a crescendo and we would have a half season because of a couple of lockouts that only lasted half a year. And we would get daily reports and updates from both sides of the table. There's no side of a table on this one. We just have to wait and trust and pray and take care of ourselves and do our best to take care of our fellow man. And not to be terribly philosophical about this, but how do you do that? When we are to look after ourselves and also to try to follow through on whatever philosophical or religious feelings that you have, and that would be if you have an extra can of food, share it, and if you know of someone who is perhaps older and lonesome, call them and try to share the time that you have, especially if you are hunkered down in your home and you have the time. Telephones still work, and if you know of someone who is by themselves and perhaps lonesome or ill, it doesn't hurt to make a phone call. And if you have extra canned food and there's a way to drop that off at a central location without jeopardizing yourself, or at a house of worship location, that is another something that you can do if you have something extra that you can share, because there are people that don't have enough right now, and there are people that are homeless, and I know there are central agencies trying to coordinate this, but that is something that those of us that are sitting at home, and that may not be any of the four of you. You may have jobs you're still going to, but those of us who are sitting idle, that is something that we can do. We can make a phone call, or we can share, and we don't need to necessarily do it by interacting with groups of 50 or more and violating the law. We can do it by just sharing. Anyway, back to your discussion about the playoffs, or about breaking down the playoff structure. I have no wisdom, I have no insight, because I'm sure that the one thing that we have learned from past partial seasons is that the people on 6th Avenue are brilliant when it comes to coming up with solutions and to have plans well in advance. And I'm sure there's an A, B, C, D, E, and F on the time remaining and how they would go about it and how they would settle it with the Board of Governors and the Players Association. All they need is to know how much time they have to work with. And again, that is the uncertainty, but the one thing you can be assured of is that they have a plan, and they have several plans. And so once the green light is given and the ample amount of time for the players to prepare is given, they will have a plan to follow through with. We don't know what it is, and they may know what the plan is. I'm sure they do, but we just are all uncertain because of the timing of this.
So, Doc, this is Scott, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we talked about this in the earlier part of the show.
I get on these long-winded spiels, Scott, and so I'll try to be more concise with my answers. But it is of great concern to me how we are behaving during this time and treating one another.
Oh, we 100% agree, and we were all kind of saying the same thing in the earlier part of the show, and we were also applauding all the owners, Josh Harris and the Devils ownership, of how they're taking care of the hourly workers that work in the stadiums and the people that make everything happen behind the scenes. I just wanted to ask you a question, just because we are in such unprecedented times. When the word came down that the NHL was going to suspend all play, how did you find that out, and what was your initial reaction?
I found it out probably the same you did with the announcement that was made in the afternoon. I was leaving Chicago. We had a game with San Jose on Wednesday night, San Jose and Chicago, and I was leaving that afternoon. The location that I live in, Michigan, is very close on the train line, and I love the train. I like training up the eastern coast too, anywhere between Boston and Washington, because it is a train line. Whenever I go from where I live to Chicago for a game, I almost always take the train for simplicity and for a lot of other reasons that I just enjoy it. and it was just about an hour or so before departure that the announcement was made, and so I learned it at that very moment. I think by the time that we left the arena on Wednesday, and of course the NBA had made its announcement earlier in the evening, and we had listened to the discussion on our Wednesday night hockey in the studio, and all of the opinions that had been given. It seemed as though the reasoned approach to this would be to follow suit, which the league did the next day. And so when lives are at stake, you can talk about dollars and cents and everything else and what the economic impact is going to be. Of course it is going to have economic impact, but when you're talking about lives, that's an altogether different thing. It's far more important. And it was the mayor of New York who spoke on 60 Minutes tonight who said the very same thing. He said, I don't want to hear about economic impact. If we jeopardize lives because we're going to make a few more dollars by keeping places open, what does that say about us? And I think by and large that's the reason it didn't surprise me that the league did what it did.
Hey, Doc, this is Scotty here as well, and being that we've been talking about this with, being that we've been talking about no hockey and your big Pirates and no baseball going on, what does the Doc get up to in the meantime when he does have a little time at home?
I'm finishing up a book that will come out in the fall, and I'm finishing the touch-up work because the deadline coming up on that. My wife and I went out and fed carrots to the horses this afternoon that are stabled about 10 miles from here. And so routine things like that as we stand on one leg and then on the other waiting for a season to hopefully come back. But I guess just normal things that families do. It's a rare thing to get it that I get time to actually work on the final draft of a book that I'm working on with Kevin Allen, who for 34 years was the correspondent for USA Today, and so we have been finishing the final work on that because we have a deadline to meet. So we've been doing that, and I was taken into the Fort Wayne Comets Hall of Fame last weekend, and a number of my classmates showed up from high school, and so I believe in snail mail, and so I'm writing to each of my classmates that attended to thank them because it was a surprise. I didn't realize it was coming. So those are just kind of routine things that I do on a daily basis. It's just that I have more time to do them, and I had no idea 2 weeks ago that I would have this kind of time. And I imagine that is occurring with several people who are listening to the podcast tonight.
Hey, Doc, congratulations on the Hall of Fame. But just real quick, could you tell our listeners out there just a little bit about your bet you're working on?
Oh, yes. It's autobiographical, but it's a lot about hockey. And my career took me to Port Huron, Michigan, Maine in the American League, Philadelphia, New Jersey, doing Rangers games. And undoubtedly the people in all of those cities will be disappointed because there won't be as much about the teams that I followed during those years as they would want, because a book can only have so much printing in it. And there will be attention paid to all of those teams during all of those stops, but it won't be enough because, as I said, it is autobiographical, and I've been a lot of places and had the good fortune to do a lot of things during that time. And so to cover it all, there's not adequate space to really do an entire book on my years with the Devils, 21 total. I was very blessed to have been around them during a lot of the lean years and a lot of years when the team was just wonderful. But it is autobiographical, but it's mostly about my experiences in hockey, all of which were a lot of fun.
Doc, it's Jonathan again. First off, once you get that book done and published, you're cordially invited back to come on and discuss the book come the fall. So, don't forget us when you're doing your media tour. You're invited back.
That's very good of you to do. And I sure appreciate the way that you're continually regenerating the hockey fans of New Jersey. I want to continue to remain relevant to them, even though it has now been 8 years since I was last a regular doing games there, and of course there was that Stanley Cup final against Los Angeles that I got a chance to do for NBC as well. So it seems like the time has gone very quickly since my departure, but I still wear my Bulls ring that Lou Lamoriello gave me, and he gave me 3, but I've passed a couple of those on to my family members. But I still greatly appreciate the memories that I had during my time there.
Now, kind of steering the, kind of going back to the pausing of our season, the first thing is I was talking to people that came up in my conversation because, I'm a student of history. I teach history. Was the 1919 Cup that was not awarded due to a very similar circumstance. It just seems so interesting that, we're almost in a repeat in, very, similar year almost.
Yes, it did. The sad thing was that it took the death of a player to force the NHL to cancel the finals, the final, and it is sad that it went that far. And I'm sure I have not looked back to read the accounts, the specific accounts of that, but they did make progress in the playoff, but they did not finish it because of the death of a player. The outbreak, oddly enough, the first reported, it was in Queens, New York, on March the 11th of 1918. And so there was a significant amount of time that had passed from the first reported incident of Spanish influenza. And what would it have been? It would have been probably a year, maybe a year and a couple of weeks before the Stanley Cup would have been presented in 1919. And on a personal note, my father was born, and his father he never knew because he died of the influenza before my own father was born. So I never knew my grandfather because of that. That was that period of time in American history when the influenza took people. But yes, it was that. And so here, even though it was a century later, the NHL did react very quickly to make sure that there had not, and to my knowledge, there has not been an NHL player that has been tested positive at all. So it was fortuitous of the league to make the decision that they did.
Yeah, that series actually ended. Teams had a victory, and both teams had 2 victories, and there was also 1 tie.
Yeah.
And I can't. I know it was Seattle, and I can't. It was Seattle versus Montreal. There you go. Yeah, it's just to vacate a series like that in the middle. Like you said, it's that it had to be come from a player's death, but I mean that series was vacated right almost at the climax of the series.
Yes, very close to the end. There are circumstances that occur where you need to sometimes, I guess at that time, the teams just needed to be struck by something that dramatic before the hierarchy of the time could make a decision. But we live in wiser times and more fortuitous times now when it comes to making decisions that affect people's lives. And so credit to the current regime to have done what they did. We certainly miss the sport, but we also have to have priorities straight. And it's interesting as we follow down the line, The East Coast League was very quick after that. The American League and the Southern Pro League produces players as well, and the Federal League is the fifth of the five. And the Federal League waited for the Southern Pro League to make its announcement because they required players from the Federal League. And once that was done, the Federal League ended its season as well. So all five of the professional leagues are currently on hold.
And I believe that the ECHL actually canceled the remainder of the season. Is that correct?
I'm not sure of the wording that they used, but I know that I had spoken with one of the hierarchy at one of the franchises, and they had talked about the players going home.
Mm. So I not to make light of anything that's going on right now, but I did want to bring up something that I read on the internet the other day, which is basically all we have time to do now. So if you take the call that you made in the series against the New York Rangers, the Devils against the Rangers with the infamous Henrique it's over call, if you take that call, I think you could do it word by word. There's 20 seconds leading into the actual goal where I think it was from the point that from Kovalchuk taking this shot. If you actually say that out loud, your physical call, you can wash your hands for 20 seconds and properly wash your hands. So the other day, just for fun, I was like, you know what, because I sit there and in my head, I will sing the happy birthday because it's the easiest one to remember. But I actually did it, and it was pretty cool. It worked. And it was like, I washed my hands at the very end. I was like, Henrique, it's over. And I was like, hey, all right.
That's if that's the thing that can get people to do it, I'm thrilled that someone would use that. Even one person would use that. Happy birthday is the one that I always heard. And it seems like when you're in a hurry, really fast, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't put a name in there. You're just happy birthday to anybody.
Anything that can get people to do that, and if you can get hand sanitizer, carrying it around with you as well. I noticed on Wednesday that it's funny how you notice how many times you would have shaken hands that you didn't. And we go to the morning skate. The home team skates at 10:30. The visiting team skates at 11:30. And then you see the coaches after. You see usually a couple of players from each team. But the players, rather than having access to the dressing room, which earlier, probably 10 days earlier, we were denied, and understandably so, they were brought into a general area where their chairs were set up, and they went to the front and sat at a table as they would do during the playoffs. And so you would normally go into the dressing room and talk with individual players, and there's usually a handshake before and sometimes after that as well. And I calculated I would probably, counting the off-ice officials that you would see and the reporters and other people that you would see in the press box when you went to work that night, you would shake hands with 50 to 75 people, and some of them more than once during the day. There were only two on Wednesday, and one was a veteran player, and it was very early in the morning when I first arrived, and I offered him hand sanitizer after, and he chuckled and grudgingly took it. And then there was one on the way out of the building, and I think it was one of those cases where in both cases they forgot themselves, and probably were it today they wouldn't be doing it. But isn't it odd that you calculated, and it's probably 50 to 75 times in a normal day when you run into players and coaches and other people that you would shake hands just because that's the way we normally do business. And now it's totally different.
Yeah. Life is going to change for a while, but I like we said earlier, we have that feeling of life is going to change, but it's going to come back stronger than ever. And I think this is one of those things that can really unite us as a country and as a world, really, because it's not just us that's dealing with it. And, maybe we'll go to a non-handshake community, but at the same time, hopefully this is something that makes us stronger as a people.
100% agreed, and I think you sound as though you're an optimist. I am too, and I believe in the strong will of the people in this country, and I also believe in the ingenuity of the people that are trying to isolate, and discover not only the vaccine for the virus, but also figuring out a way to help people get better from it, and also prevent people from getting it. So we're hopeful on that regard, and if that happens sooner rather than later, then the next time that we chat here, we'll be talking about the sport a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The penalty kill was good this year again. The power play was not good again. What was it at the time we stopped? And at the time that we stopped, the power play was 21st, exactly where it was last year. The penalty kill was tied for 7th. It was 4th last year. And in points, the team was 26th. It was 29th last year. I think the one thing that was kind of disappointing had all those overtime losses, either by shootout or overtime at home, 10 of them, and just 13 home wins with still 7 to go. So that was disappointing. But Kyle came through again, got 25 goals, so he was on target to equal what he had the year before.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And Mac Black was getting on.
Trying to find some positives out of a very difficult year.
Yeah.
And there's no difficult year.
There are some there, definitely. Doc, it's Scotty again, and before when you were talking about your book, you said I'm blessed, and I really think as Devils fans we were blessed to hear you call so many games, and as we mentioned before, for so many years we had to live with 3 words. Mateau, Mateau, Mateau. But then you, in that series, gave us Henrique, it's over. And it's just one of the, best things about being a Devils fan, hearing your call. I was so glad you were on that game. But I really want to know is, who did you listen to when you were growing up, and the broadcasters that really influenced you and used to wow you with some of the ways that they would call, whatever it be, baseball, hockey, what were some of the broadcasters that really worked with you?
I'll try to be brief on this because there's so many. Initially, Bob Chase in Fort Wayne, who I mentioned on my acceptance speech on the ice Saturday night, because I lived about 45 miles from there, and we did not have access at that archaic time in history to a lot of NHL announcers. He was the announcer in Fort Wayne in the IHL, and he was, fortunately for me, he spoke good English, he used good hockey vernacular, and the slang without being slangy. And then as I moved further along in the business, Gene Hart in Philadelphia, for the enjoyment that he got out of broadcasting a game, Danny Gallivan in Montreal for the word choice that he had. And in baseball, I like Bob Prince because he cheered like crazy for my team in Pittsburgh. And I think Bell's broadcasting anything. Vin Scully always was very well prepared, and I tried to model my preparation after Vin because I thought he was always tremendously prepared. And I didn't realize until later, Vin and I have never met, even though we've talked on the phone before. I never realized that he was an analog guy, and he kept 3x5 cards on players. And so when it was a player at bat, he would pull the card out of the box, and he would have all these great anecdotes about players that were just written down on cards. They weren't on a computer. They weren't anything that was on an iPad, anything like that. And when someone asked him, not about this century, because he was broadcasting in the 21st century, they asked him what the greatest thing for broadcasters of sports was in the 20th century. He said the highlighter. And I thought, what a great answer, because an analog guy goes through the game notes that are stapled together and handed out in a press room, and he can highlight things, but he can still read them. And that was a typical bright answer from Vin.
Did Chico ever have any highlighters?
Chico had lots of pens, and occasionally they would flip them either in the air or they would go careening across the table and down into the row in front of us. And the same thing happened to me. They would not be thrown out of frustration, but sometimes they would be thrown down on the table and not out of anger, but they would just plop down there hard and they would sort of get out of control. I had multicolors because of my shirt. I would use red for the Devils and then blue if it was the Rangers, or green if it was the Minnesota Wild, whatever the color of the other team was. And sometimes they would, if they didn't have a clip on them, they would roll off on the floor. And so I wasn't the neatest guy there, but we all have our systems that we try to operate from. And I just was so lucky to have those 18 last of the 21 years. The first 3 years were difficult because the team wasn't very good. That would have been 83 to 86 when MSG had the rights the first three years, 2, 3, and 4 of the franchise. And I've often had this, Dave Lewis, who later went on to coach in the NHL, was one of the defensemen on the team, and he said it was the best bunch of guys he ever played with that couldn't win a hockey game. And they didn't win very many. But time passed. When I returned in 1993, they were a perennial playoff team, and Scott Stevens was there. And when I arrived, Jacques Lemaire had just been hired. Larry Robinson had just been hired. And a kid came in to play goal who had been in Utica the year before, named Brodeur. And out of the blocks in the fall of 93, they won the first 7 games in a row. Well, I had just come from Philadelphia, where they missed the playoffs 4 of the 5 years I was there, and I was not. So I had to get used to a lot of smiles and a lot of people celebrating in the stands at night. And that number, which was not full houses every night, would grow exponentially as the team got better, to where time passed and they moved downtown to Newark. But it was a great experience for me to be a part of.
Good timing on your part.
Yeah, right. Doc, and
it's called block.
Doc, it's Jonathan again. I gotta say, in our Facebook group, the accolades for you are flying in from all angles. But from the Devils fan club, the Devils fan club said this, that they feel like we all do, that they've been blessed to have you as a friend and supporter of the Devils fan club, and they want to thank you publicly for your contributions to their past series on Martin Brodeur and their current series on the 95 Devils. So the fan club wanted to publicly thank you, so I wanted to have a chance to read that out loud. And we all thank you for the years you did, and that's my childhood growing up, is hearing your voice calling my team and our team, have such success.
I remember the first meeting of the Devils fan club that I attended. It was in Totowa at the Holiday Inn. Ed Nudge, who now is he's a postal delivery man in Arizona, so don't feel sorry for him. He's not suffering much with the weather, but he was the president, and at that time, players routinely attended the meetings. This would have been in 1983, and the organization has been strong and has had a very loyal membership ever since that time. And this year, I try to get there every year if I can, and this was one of the years that I did not get there, but they always have a table set up at Prudential Center, and they are always encouraging people to join, and they are tireless workers, not only for charity, but for encouraging people to cheer for the Devils. You cannot say enough about people like that.
And Doc, this is, like John said, everybody's saying thank you so much for all that you do, for everything that you do, for not just calling the games, but for being the voice that, like we called you, the voice of the NHL. I have to ask you, just, you said before you and I are both kind of optimists, and I would like to think that everybody out there is trying to be as optimistic as possible. I don't want to say if, I want to say when. So when the NHL resumes, what is the one thing you're really looking forward to getting back to the booth when the NHL resumes play?
Well, the caliber of the games has changed so much in terms of the speed, and I think that, as is the case when we ever have a lockout and we resume, or when teams go on the 5-day bye and we resume, what I look for is that initial burst of energy in the first 10 minutes of the first game, and it's just hilarious how hard they go, because these are like thoroughbreds that are breaking from the gate, and they haven't raced in 5 weeks. And so should the first game for those be at home, I would anticipate the fans will notice just an incredible amount of energy on the part of both teams, because they've been anxious to play again, and they're finally getting the chance. So the speed of the game, of course, is something that's always talked about, and I would think that would be the number one thing that I'll be looking for to see, as you have put it, when we get back to work again.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Doc, it's Scotty again, and when we do get the NHL back and in the arenas, now that you aren't, just in the Prudential Center anymore, you're all over the place, the voice of the NHL. As Devils fans, we know we have a pretty house. The Prudential Center is a great arena to go to see a game at. Besides, because this is a Devils podcast, so the Rangers and Flyers have to be immediately disqualified from this question. But besides them, and besides, of course, The Rock, home of the New Jersey Hockey Devils, what's the best arena around the league that you like to go see a game at?
Well, yeah, I probably should qualify this in terms of working or watching as a fan, and I think the answer to both of your questions is Bell Center. I don't know if any of you listening to the podcast have ever gone, perhaps with the fan club, or gone to Bell Center in Montreal to watch a game. It is fantastic, not only for the energy in the building, because when they open the doors, there are some fans that run screaming. They did that at the Forum, too. They were running, screaming out of excitement that they were inside the arena, but also to get to the standing room locations there. But there is an energy about the place that is unlike any in Canada. The other cities in Canada are full of loyal hockey fans, but they are not as effusive in their emotion as they are in Montreal. And not only that, but the location for seating in Montreal is pretty tight to the action. And then as a working condition, the ground rule I have is 20 rows or closer is wonderful for us. And we are that, but we are way up. There's not a problem with being high as long as you are close. And the new arena in Detroit was built 90 feet up is where the press box is in the broadcast booth, but it's only 18 rows of seating back. And so you can see all the corners, and the lighting is very bright, and a white number on a red jersey, as you have in New Jersey, as they have in Detroit, is much easier to pick up. I like places where I can identify players, and I will always credit Lou Lamoriello for when he changed the uniforms from the green that they now wear on St. Patrick's this year, and maybe on other occasions that you know better, to the black. They went to the red and black. And he had some of his hierarchy go into the upper tier at the Meadowlands and have office workers model the new red jersey that was going to be worn with black pants. In the middle of the summer, when the Meadowlands was a cement floor, and he had them go down on the cement floor and just walk around and see if that sleeve number and the back number were visible from the second tier of the Meadowlands. Now, we like that as broadcasters because we like to identify the numbers, but he wanted it to be visible for the paying customers because you want to know who the players are, and you can't read the lettering because the lettering's too small, but you can read the back number, of course, on almost anybody's jersey, but you want to be able to read the sleeve number, and normally those are only 4 inches high. But to his credit, he wanted to make sure. Now, a lot of places, I'm sure what happens is they bring the jersey in on a hanger, and a vice president of something looks at it and says, "Looks good to me," and it's approved. But he was a when it came to details, and he wanted to make sure that was a visible number. And so that was what they did that summer, long ago, when they transitioned from the red jersey and the green pants to the red jersey and the black. He wanted to make sure it was going to be visible, and largely it is. And we're spoiled when we come into New Jersey because we're down there right at the top of the lower bowl in the lounge. And if you can't identify players from there, you're having problems. And so far, I can still
do it. Oh, that's great, Doc.
Yeah, Doc, it's Jonathan again. That's an awesome, it's one of those finer details that, only someone like you would know. Now, I know your schedule is normally busy, but no, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying only someone like Lou would pay attention to it. I don't know of anybody else that's done that, but it makes sense to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does. And I remember hearing a story about when they required names on jerseys, when the NHL made that as a mandate. I want to say the owner of the Maple Leafs started putting the names on as required, but putting the names as the same color of the jerseys because he just didn't want it. I want to say I heard that fact, and I hope it's true, that I heard it, and now that I'm saying it here, but I don't know if you've heard that before, but if that's just another one of those interesting jersey facts too.
Bingo. Harold Ballard, you're right.
There you go. That's just such a cool fact.
Blue names on blue jerseys.
So my final question for you.
Requirement of the league, but he still was able to sell his programs.
Hey.
So my final question for you is, with your busy schedule, do you get to go and watch the game as a fan? Probably, I'm assuming not often as you want, but do you get to go at all?
Well, that was one of the upsides of lockouts was that I was able to see some American League and some Federal League games because Federal League, as I mentioned, is the lower rung, but there is a team nearby where I live in the Federal League, and the American Hockey League is sort of pockmarked all across the country. But now with all the leagues down, I'm not able to see that. But I do like to occasionally, if we wind up in a city the night before, and it's one of those cities that has a minor league team in the same area, I like to have a kind of a businessman's holiday and go see a minor league game or a college game. But those opportunities are very few. It's always good when you go into Boston the night before in the middle of the winter because invariably, if you're going in for a Saturday game or a Sunday afternoon game, there's a college game going on Saturday, and so you can go to that. But the chances to actually see live games out of the area in which I live are very rare.
Wow. Well, Doc, thank you so much for coming on to the Let's Go Devils podcast. We always look forward having you on. You're an old friend to us because we all grew up watching Devils hockey and NHL hockey, and we grew up watching you, and it was a privilege, and we look forward to you getting back and calling Stanley Cup, and we're also looking forward when your book comes out in the fall. And please stay safe.
I have the same wish for all of you and for all listening that everyone stays safe and takes care of themselves and as best they can help other people as well. And one of God's greatest gifts, I think, is that of memory. One of man's greatest gifts is audio and videotape. And so we have that, and we have all kinds of technology that we can watch old games. And so every once in a while, I do get out old games and look at them and see Jamie Langenbrunner tucking one under the crossbar in Montreal that helped clinch the Devils a divisional title on a night when all the other games just worked out perfectly, and the Devils were playing the last one in Montreal, and they roared back in the third period, and it just got more exciting all the time. And I think about some of those spectacular performances that Marty Brodeur put on, and I realize they're part of God's gift as a memory, but they're reinforced by the fact that I can watch a CD or a DVD of those great performances of the past, and you guys being younger can remember those, but also fashion together some of the performances you've seen this year that are memorable from a positive standpoint. You remember some good games that the Devils had this year, and those are things we can cherish over these next few days. We hope it's only a few, but during these times when we're waiting to get back to work again, or you're getting back to being a fan. Thanks so much for the invitation, and thanks so much for the people that have sent in text and other messages during the course of the night. Always appreciate the invitation coming from you, Sam. I know you've been a correspondent on various websites, one of which the frequent now and then. I know the Devils matter to you and to the rest of you as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Doc. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Doc.
Have a good night.
Thank you, too.
That is Doc Emrick of NBC Sports, Hall of Fame broadcaster, great human being. That was a great interview, guys. We had some technical issues down here outside of Disney World, but we made it work. I can tell you that is a producer's worst nightmare when we literally tested phone lines before Doc went on, and I don't know how it fixed itself. I think the hockey gods above were just playing a little prank on us, but yeah, that was awesome. I can't wait for his book to come out. We got to start plugging that.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
I definitely want to pick up that book as soon as possible. And yeah, it's always phenomenal to talk to Doc. He's just a wealth of hockey knowledge. Just that small fact about the Devils jerseys and Lou wanting to make sure that you can see them. Like that's
never heard that story
only
before.
Yeah, I don't know if many have. That's small things you hear when you're talking to someone like Doc. That's just such a wealth of knowledge. I gotta assume that his book is just going to be full of small little snippets like that. Throughout the course of his career, he's seen it all, and always just a great conversation. I love, this is the second time that we had him on the podcast. Scotty, I know it's only your first time talking to him, but man, I love talking to him on this podcast. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think he totally nailed it too. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to give you a big thank you for the heads up. No more food comments when closing. I almost forgot about that because I was talking to him off air.
The awkward way. The awkward way it landed last time.
And I was telling him about Chico. I was like, oh, Chico says hi. And by the way, we were supposed to do Chico Eats Again down in Florida. And he started laughing and this and that. So there was a little inside joke there that he would have gotten. But I kept it. I kept it to my my script because I didn't want to screw it up like last time. But we did ask Chico yesterday if it's Keller ham or pork roll. But I'm not going to give it away for those that are listening in now. You can find it at letsgodevils.com on our podcast. He did make a vote. I wasn't too happy about it.
And as you're talking, the lens in my glasses just popped out, so no, I can't see anything. Listen, all things aside, I'll just do this so I could see. All things aside,
hands in front of you, like you're feeling around, like wow.
I'm like, is this thing on? All joking aside, I think one of the things that Doc said that I can't agree with more is throughout whatever is going on right now, just be smarter. We said it before in the beginning. We'll say it again over and over and over. Don't go and put yourself at risk, but more importantly, don't put anybody around you at risk. If you have elderly parents or elderly friends, or you just hang out with old people, I don't know. Think about them before you start making stupid decisions because you want to go get drunk on St. Patrick's Day. There'll be plenty of St. Patrick's Day parades and bars and all that. You can have green beer any time of year. It's not just once a year. So be smart and take care of each other. He said a great thing about going out, and if you have extra food, bring it down to a food kitchen. I know a lot of places are starting to run low. Just take care of everybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's absolutely right. Just make sure you're just be nice, everyone. Just be nice. It's crazy times right now. We said it in the beginning. We'll say it again. This too shall pass. And just be nice to each other. It really reminded me yesterday. I was driving past. Since they're not going to pay us, I'm not going to say, but one of the big warehouse stores. It reminded me so much of Black Friday. There was a cop outside, and like it had that Black Friday vibe, but also a little bit different. And it's you're hearing these horror stories of people in stores, like just everyone's in the same boat. Let's just all be kind to each other and be nice and look out for each other.
Yeah, just take care of yourselves. Avoid big gatherings. Wash your hands. This will pass. We'll get back. Don't.
Be
Yeah,
smart.
we're fine.
Hey,
and
actually,
speaking of what?
No, I was just going to say, one of the cool.
Go ahead. What do you want to?
No.
What do you want to? Go ahead.
Hey, listen. When we get the all clear and we're all good and everything is back to normal and we can get back to life and we can learn a lesson from this and we can move positively forward, the first live podcast that we have is going to be an absolute crazy fun excitement. I don't know. I'm losing words because I keep hearing things popping up in my earphones. I don't know if it's happening live, but all right, go ahead, Scotty. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I want to give a shout to, I think our man, I forgot his name, Jake, I think Weckley or something like that, is going to have his first kid in July, and then David Decker just had a kid as well. Right. Some couple Baby new Decker. Devils fans coming into the world. So very happy for them. And teach them young the ways of the new D hockey Devils. Always about extending our Devils family. Just want to say congratulations to both of them right now.
So before we close it out, I'm going to kind of go off something that Doc said. He's correct. We have a lot of games that we can watch from the past. I know my answer to this question, but I want to hear the three of you. Sammy, chime in when you can. First, what is the one game you would watch first from our past? Since we're all going to have a lot of free time, it appears. We're going to be streaming everything. Devils games of the past. What will be the first one you want to watch?
I know.
I have my answer.
Let me go first.
Go ahead.
The first 25 minutes of the home opener this past season.
Why? So you can lead into disappointment?
Yeah, I'll just pause that for nothing.
That's funny.
2003, Game 7 against Ottawa.
Okay.
Because that was a hell of a game.
I was going to say the series against Philly, the Game 7, that we came back after the Larry Robinson tirade. Eliash, game winner.
Okay. I'm gonna go right for it. I'm gonna go Game 4, the '95 Finals.
Yeah.
That is gonna be my first go-to game. I was lucky enough and blessed that I had the opportunity and a ticket for that day, and that is a lifelong memory. And that will be the first Devils game that I watch. And I'm actually currently looking for that somewhere online so I can watch it over the next couple of days. But that is my That is the first game
Oh,
that I will watch. Sam, you want to amend your answer?
yeah, I'm in my answer. I'm probably going to go back to the video of this podcast tonight, and I'm going to make a 30-second video public service announcement of the Let's Go Devils podcast, playing Doc Emrick's call. Henrique gets over, following Beer Baron's advice, and post it up there. And we're probably in violation of a lot of copyrights, but I figured if we could save one life, we can save many.
Hey, put it up till it's taken down.
It's so funny looking at a video feed in Beer Baron without glasses. I don't even know who that guy is. Maybe that's Scott.
To see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's close it up.
So real quick before we close out, for all listeners, I'm gonna actually put it up in the Facebook group. I want to hear your answers of what's the first game that you would watch. So I'm gonna post in the Facebook group shortly. I want to see everyone else's opinion. What's the first game that you would watch? Going back in time with all this time we have with No Devils hockey, I want to know.
I thought of
everyone's
another
answer. One. Ooh, throw it out there.
You know what? I don't remember the exact year, but they were playing the Flyers again, and it was that there was a massive snowstorm, and half the arena didn't show up. And I remember I had tickets, and I was so pissed because my dad wouldn't drive on the turnpike to the game, and I think the Devils won like 6-5 in overtime. There was like 6 or 7 fights or something like that. It was awesome, and I was so mad that my dad didn't drive. I mean, it was a bad snowstorm. I can't remember. It was in it's got to be the 90s. Got to be like the mid 90s in there.
That's not the 334
No. There was maybe probably like 5,000, 6,000 people in the stands, but it was a really bad snowstorm. And there was just a ton of fights. And I think it was 6-5 the Devils ended up winning, or maybe it was 5-4, something like that.
Fair enough. There you go. Amended answer. So, Sam, I keep hearing the music. You looking to close this out here?
Yes, sir.
Hey, you want to close out, or you want me?
I'll close out. We want to thank
All right, go ahead,
Doc
Sam.
Emrick. We want to thank Doc Emrick for coming on to the Let's Go Devils podcast. Now he is a friend of the show because now he is a regular. We had him twice. Also like to thank the Devils fan club for plugging us on their social media pages. I want to thank all the listeners and viewers of this fine podcast. Over 60,000 downloads and 350,000 views. Stay safe, everybody. Until next time. Let's go Devils.